This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Danilo's free, and it goes to Gibbs wide.
First time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robinson do. Taylor one, he scores! And the City ground goes ballistic!
Here's Bob Williams. He's through here! And in the end, Forrest will say it doesn't matter how you play as long as you win it.
Hello and welcome back to Red Side of the Trent for the preview show where we take an insight for our next opponents. And joining me, I'm delighted to welcome Chris Budd from My Old Man Said podcast. Chris, how are you? You well?
I'm very well, are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you very much. How was the weekend? Obviously, you beat Luton quite comfortably, whereas we threw away a 2-goal lead.
Yes, yeah, really routine. It sounded like you missed your chances and we took ours and then just controlled the game. It was I expected a much harder game, to be honest. I thought they'd come and maybe have a go, and they just didn't at all. It felt like a pre-season friendly after an hour.
Well, they didn't really have a go at us until we gifted them their goals. So, you know, kind of swings and roundabouts, 2-0.
I mean, we gifted them a goal, to be fair. It was a pretty calamitous own goal, that one.
Yeah, Villa, obviously, after a rough opening game to the season to Newcastle United, where it looked like you were at 6s and 7s, obviously losing Tyrone Mings in the process of that for the whole season. You've not really looked back other than the Liverpool game, have you?
No, I mean, you often get those weird games, don't you, on the opening day where you kind of... We didn't actually play horrendously badly. I think obviously losing Mings was just like a massive loss. Of course, we'd lost Buendia in the midweek before as well. So we'd lost sort of two heavy hitters in the first week of the season, and we already had Moreno and Ramsey out, and we'd lost Ashley Young from the year before. So you kind of had lost 5 starters from the team that had got us into Europe pretty much. Newcastle caught us on a good day, as it were, for them. You know, they were very clinical, but I don't necessarily think it was a 5-1 game. The Anfield game, I was really impressed with Liverpool, actually. But again, we missed chances. We missed chances at St James's. We missed chances at Anfield. And then in the other games, as soon as we seem to get the first one, the second seems to come pretty soon afterwards. And we've tended to control games pretty well, other than a couple of games in Europe where I think we've been a little bit hit and miss. And then we seem to have got our European shooting boots on as well last week.
Yeah, I mean, I've not watched you too much in Europe. Have you kind of been rotating the side and giving other players minutes, like players like John Duran and people like that?
Yeah, I think the first game we were over in Warsaw, we were playing Legia Warsaw, and they've obviously got European pedigree. And I think we underestimated them a little bit. I think they'd lost something like 1 game at home all year, and we just thought we could kind of like bowl into town and roll them over with a second string side. And of course we didn't, even though we should have got out of there with a draw, really. Again, we missed chances, but we just got sucker punched on the break and played into their hands a little bit. I think that was a bit of a learning curve. And then we played Mostar, kind of fumbled our way through that one and won it with a late one. But then when we went to Alkmaar last week, we absolutely flattened them and they couldn't lay a glove on us, to be honest. The game was done after sort of an hour. So even though we've had like a busy week of games, we've had 3 in 7 days, we've actually had the games wrapped up, with plenty of time to spare.
Yeah. From a Villa perspective, how difficult is it to not be excited about this current side and how your trajectory's gone since Emery's come in? Because I mentioned on our pod from the weekend against Liverpool and looking into this game a little bit with the Lover lads, is I think Emery's the best manager outside of Pep and Klopp, in my opinion. His pedigree is ridiculous. So how hard is it? Yeah. So going back to my initial question, how hard is it not to get too excited and kind of almost? Well, you've got to be confident, haven't you?
Yeah. Is it hard to not? History suggests there's always a bump in the road with the Villa because we've tended to have this like tendency to shoot ourselves in the foot, but a lot of fans, for example, before the Luton game, were thinking this would be typical Villa to lose this game. And then it was so easy. And I think there's been a few moments in the course of Emery's tenure where you kind of think that the slip-up's going to happen. And then it doesn't, because games like when Forest came to Villa Park towards the end of last season was a prime example. A game you should win and potentially a difficult one and a bit of a banana skin, but we kind of got through the game and we find a way. even if we don't play well. Whereas this season, we've tended to be playing quite well. Our level has been quite high, and we're very clinical, in front of goal. So yeah, it's difficult. But I also think that the fans are sort of, they're trying to keep a level head, but also knowing that, well, we know where our bar's set now. So because the expectation's that much higher, we're playing well, but we also expect them to be playing to a certain extent in the way we are, as opposed to having a little purple patch where you necessarily punch above your weight. This isn't, the long-term forecast for Emery is that we've been very good for the best part of a year now. So this isn't a fluke, and it's not a short little run of games, even though obviously we've won 12 on the bounce at home, which is an amazing run. But this is kind of who we are, I think, now, to varying degrees. There's going to be peaks and troughs, and you're going to have bad days at the office, but generally speaking, we're in the mix now.
Yeah, it's funny because when you say about a bump in the road, I watched the game against Brighton because it was a midday kickoff, and I thought this is going to be an absolute cracker. It's going to be back and forth. He was absolutely
I thought exactly the same.
And Ollie Watkins scored me so many points for my fantasy team. It was great. I mean,
we've had a few games like that. The West Ham game. I thought that was against a team who we thought were going to be in and amongst us. We battered them. Brighton got it handed to them good and proper. Even we went to Chelsea, and I thought Chelsea would vastly improve this season at some point. I think everyone's still waiting to maybe see if they click, but we went there and got the win as well. So 3 of the sides you thought would be maybe in and amongst us, we've kind of dispatched pretty well.
I mean, we beat Chelsea, so that's no mean feat. Let's but let's just talk about Unai Emery, because obviously there's obviously the whole meme of him being at Arsenal and not kind of doing really well. My mate pointed out to me, quite funnily enough, I can't believe I'd never made this connection, but it seems to any team where he's got Villa in it, he seems to do well. Obviously Sevilla and Villarreal being previous clubs, but how incredible has his influence been on the team, really?
I mean, it's night and day, isn't it? Even like for neutrals, or even probably people who didn't like Villa when Steven Gerrard was there, you see what a good group of players we had, even under Gerrard, really. But it shows what you can do when you put an adult in charge, and you don't have a rookie manager who tactically hasn't got a clue at Premier League, or sort of a much higher level. You've come from Scotland, where you've kind of walked it with Rangers in a season when Celtic were probably the worst they've ever been. I think he kind of got a bit ahead of himself and thought it was the finished product when he wasn't, and he kind of showed that. I mean, towards the end of his tenure, the game at the reverse of this fixture last year, the game at the City Ground was one of the worst games of football I think I've ever watched.
I couldn't tell you what Villa were trying to do. To be fair, I couldn't really tell you what Forest were trying to do, other than
that was the thing, wasn't it?
Try and be resolute a little bit.
Yeah, it was a game that Villa should have won, and yet we still just sort of fumbled the game. It was an awful performance from both sides. It was just such a bad spectacle for the Premier League. And he was already under pressure at that point. But Emery, he knocked him into shape pretty quickly. And I think the fact that he won his first game against Man United, and then he went, I think it was Brighton the second game, and we won that just before that World Cup break. It just set us up. It pulled us away from the bottom. And I think the players kind of calmed down. They sort of thought, okay, we're in the mix again now, and we are, sort of we're being managed by a guy who knows how to get the best out of us already. And then slowly but surely, he put his own stamp on the team. And obviously this summer they bought very, very well. Players like Diaby, Pau Torres, etc., have come in, done really well. And obviously the running spoke for itself. From where we were when he took over to then getting into Europe, is kind of it speaks for itself. And with his European pedigree and everything else, I just think he's, you're right in saying, put it that way, in that he is probably just behind Guardiola and Klopp. And they've kind of won the big prizes that back up their abilities. Emery is number 3 for me.
I mean, yeah, people might scoff at that kind of statement because you think, Pochettino and Arteta, but
neither of them have won anything.
That would be literally my starting argument. Like, let's get his CV out and look at what he's won. I mean, he's won about 1 million. And I suppose,
what he's won and who he's won it with. Because Sevilla are not like a big spending team compared to like a Premier League side. The last few years, they've been raided. Villarreal, he got, a very kind of small market team. The town that their team's in is tiny. It's a very small football club, and they've, punched above their weight consistently for a while. So it can't be it can't just be luck when you consistently compete with teams that, in a league where you've got Barca and Real who just flatten everyone. And obviously, up until recently, you would have had sort of Valencia, Atletico Madrid as well. So the fact that you've taken sides like that to win trophies consistently means that, you know, you do deserve a certain amount of respect. And I think that, you know, he had a really difficult gig, didn't he, at Arsenal after Wenger, where, you know, a bit like Moyes at Old Trafford, where you're the guy after the main guy who's been there a long time. And I think he was on a hiding to nothing, and the press sort of hounded him, frankly. And kind of he became a bit of a caricature and sort of, you know, his English obviously wasn't the best. And I think he's acknowledged that, and he's kind of come back to Villa, and his ability to communicate what he wants to do on and off the field is so much better now. And he's brought in his team. And I think he's kind of let the Villa owners just say, we trust you, go and look after the football side and we'll handle the business side. And I think because of that, he's kind of got a free rein, and you're seeing the fruits of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's took him. He's been there a year now, so I wouldn't say like this is. Would you say it's his team now? Because obviously,
yes,
he's only had like one summer, ante, maybe a January as well. So, but you say, yeah, you would be. Who's been like? You can't say Ollie Watkins, right? But who's been like really impressive for you this season?
I think the emergence of Konza at the back has been huge. There's a few, to be honest. There's a lot of. I mean, even like the improvement in Bailey, and a lot of Villa fans are kind of a bit chalk and cheese on Bailey. But actually, when you look at his stats, his end products there, I think Diaby as a signing has been brilliant. It seems to be the press get it wrong every week. His value seems to go up and up and up with every time a member of the mainstream media mentions him. I think he'll be like £100 million player by the end of the season, I'm sure. Well, I mean, can't seem to actually get what we spent on him. But and Douglas Luiz has been in. He has. Well, he had to. Obviously, we lost Moreno. We were very well stocked at left back, and there was a sort of a fear for long periods of last season that Digne just couldn't stay fit. We knew he was a good player because, you know, you don't play for France for as long as he did if you're a bad player. You don't play for Barcelona, etc. But he couldn't stay fit. Now he's had a run of games. He's really consistent, both going forward and in defence. He's a different player to Moreno. You know, Moreno's box office, and he's lightning quick, and he's he gets to the byline, pulls it back. Digne's more of a sort of on the 3/4 and cross it, but he's just a solid player. I think the emergence of Douglas Luiz, who's gone up another level this season, has been fantastic. There's so many players who've been impressive this season, and I suppose the fact that Emery's knocked over the whole of his tenure, that the improvement in knocking John McGinn into shape, now he's become like a real top player, where before I think he had all the attributes that he could be a good player and managers tended to like him, but he wasn't quite delivering and he didn't have the end product. Now he has, and you've seen that from a few players. Yeah,
I mean, I really like Douglas Luiz. I think I've said on another podcast that I do that I think he's not far behind Rodri, to be honest, in terms of how he is and what he can do on the ball as a defensive midfielder, but also as someone who goes for. He scores quite a lot of goals for a defensive midfielder. I know he takes set pieces and stuff, but he actually does score from open play quite a lot, doesn't he?
Yes, when I said it at the weekend, and I try not to make sort of outlandish statements, but I just said about Luiz and Kamara that while there's probably individually better players than them, like I think Rodri, as you said, he's like the main man in that position in the league, and there's a couple of others. As a deep sitting pair in Luiz and Kamara, I think they're the best in the league at the moment.
I mean, that's a statement, but we've got to talk about Ollie Watkins because he's probably the second best English striker in the setup at the moment. He's absolutely flying. I mean, since Emery's come in, he's been unbelievable. Like, talk to me.
Well, in the January window, quite a few people raised eyebrows when we sold Danny Ings, because on paper you'd say, Watkins and Ings as either a duo or as, a sort of an interchangeable lone striker is a really good bit of firepower to have. And we were kind of worrying a little bit. They think, oh no, are we going to, if Watkins gets an injury, we're screwed now. But then I think Watkins sort of took the bait a little bit and said, right, I'm the main man now. And he got confidence from Emery just backing him. And then he went on that fantastic scoring run last season. He had a little bit of a barren spell right at the end of the season and then into this season. But once he's sort of got his shooting boots, he's been great. And I think the good thing about him is when he doesn't score goals, he still assists.
Yeah.
So I think he's got something like 15 goal involvements, be it goals or assists this season, which is fantastic. And that's what you want, isn't it, from your forward players? Where if teams are kind of marking him out of the game, he still makes things happen.
I think that's what's good about him, though, because he used to play as a winger primarily for Exeter City and then Brentford, and then he was kind of a winger to start with at Villa, and then he's kind of converted into that centre forward. I guess that's why he can produce assists and stuff, so it kind of works in your favour. But would you say that there's maybe a weakness in terms of depth at Villa? So say if like the spine of your team got picked up injuries, would you worry about that, or have you got enough cover in terms of like John Duran, Tielemans? I'm trying to think. You got Diego Carlos still, I think, amongst the ranks, haven't you? If he's come back, from injury.
And Chambers. We've got a lot of depth. I think most teams are going to struggle. What I would say is we're fifth in the table with a good gap now, and that's without Ramsey, Moreno, Mings, Buendia, who are all starters last year, and we're all big players for us. So I think the fact that we're where we are now suggests that these are the guys that we've got depth. I mean, I think if you were to get additional injuries at this point, then yes. But I think you'd probably be quite unlucky if you started losing additional, big players for you. I'd probably say if you were to lose Watkins or Martinez, you're going to be asking questions then. But then I think it would be very difficult for any team to replace those kind of players. Your main striker or your first choice goalkeeper, other than maybe someone like Arsenal, who've obviously got two very good goalkeepers.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think I know Moreno and Ramsey are due back fairly soon, probably after the next international break. When Mings is probably season is written off. Buendia, hopefully we'll have him back for sort of, maybe after Christmas, sort of February, March time for the running, which would be great just to have him back in the rotation. But the fact that we can bring Tielemans off the bench, who hasn't even been particularly good yet, who's obviously been a really class player in the Premier League the last few years, sort of shows the development since we came into the league, and now the depth we've got. Even at the weekend, you're bringing Bailey off the bench, you're bringing Tielemans off the bench, you're bringing Diego Carlos, who has played Champions League football. We've got really, really good players, and then even a little spattering of pretty good youngsters as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Jacob Ramsey. I thought he was so impressive for the under-21s in the summer until he got his injury. The one surprise that was the one surprise I had in the summer was the departure of Cameron Archer, because I thought at Middlesbrough he was really good, and with you qualifying for the Conference League, I thought he might be the ideal rotational player. Obviously, gone with this John Duran, who I don't know a great deal about, to be honest. I know he scored a fair few goals though. Was you surprised about Archer leaving? I know you've got a buyback clause though on him.
Yeah, we do. I think what it was, he's very similar to Watkins. So he doesn't offer you anything different when Watkins is fit. I think he's a sort of a fox in the box type player, but he doesn't have the all-round game of Watkins, and he's probably not physical enough to just, like, Duran's a big lad. He's built, and he plays more like a sort of a Benteke type player when we had him. So he's very different. So you can utilise him in a different way. And I think with Archer, it was similar with Aaron Ramsey, that from an FFP point of view, when a team like Sheffield United offers you sort of 18 million quid for a guy who's barely kicked a ball in the Premier League, I think you've got to take it. I think the offer was just too good. Villa were like, wow, we can actually make 18 million profit. It looks great on the P&L sheet. The same with Archer. The same with Ramsey, who went to Burnley for sort of 14 million. You factor that in with Chukwuemeka, who left last season for 20 to Chelsea. None of them have been doing anything really at their clubs. It turns out, I'd say, it's very easy to say in hindsight, but I think even at the time we thought that's actually the right time to go. Archer's 22; he's not going to start games. I think it was the right deal. To be honest, he had to go when he did.
There's definitely something in the water in Birmingham, because he's bloody talent coming out of the eyeballs, even at the blue side of
with obviously with young Bellingham winning the award last night.
Well, even his brother's doing all right at Sunderland. So, I mean, but Villa have always had a good academy. The one I thought was going to come through was Louis Barry, and he's like dwindling at Stockport on loan by the looks of it. But
he's been banging the goals in. Actually, he kind of disappeared last year. I think he was at MK Dons and Salford maybe, and he's just had a really bad injury, so he's going to be out for a while. I know he had an operation today. I think it was a hamstring tear, but he'd been back. He's something like 6 in 6 he'd scored there. So we just started to sort of spark back into life, obviously having been at Barcelona.
Yeah. So what's the aim for this season for Villa? Is it try and qualify? Are you kind of looking at Champions League, or are
I
you
think
kind of
so.
trying to? Yeah,
I think so.
I suppose you've got
Especially,
to.
yeah.
Like fourth place is definitely up for grabs.
I think for Villa, realistically, fourth is tough, but fifth is doable. So where we are right now, it's because obviously the likelihood of fifth being a Champions League spot this season,
Yeah,
it sort of it opens up an opportunity. And I just look at the teams, and there are teams, of course, who can get better. But I just look at sort of, Chelsea, Man United, West Ham, Brighton, and at the moment, we are better than them, and
yeah,
we've got good squad depth. So I think the goal would be, even if you don't get Champions League, you want to be Europa League next season. You want to be in a better competition. So you're going to be wanting to finish fifth or sixth, and you're probably going to want to have a run in the Conference League. Which I think if we take it seriously and we can kind of win our group and manage our squad, there's no reason why we can't win that.
yeah. I'd agree with you. I mean,
I think
the
you have to be ambitious,
well.
don't? I think you have to be ambitious this year, because Chelsea and Man U at some point they will get their house in order. The fact that Tottenham have got better this season means they're back in the mix, which of course they weren't. Yeah, they were beneath us last year. So I think when there's that little window of opportunity of the fifth place getting Europe, I think you have to take it this year, because it might go away.
And I also think there's a cluster of teams that could win the FA Cup, and I would put your name in that hat. I don't know if you're still in the League Cup or not. I can't actually remember.
No, do you know what we had a pretty disastrous. I think we were in the third round against Everton, and we just made loads of changes, and you could just tell we weren't taking it seriously. The whole event as a game was just a farce, to be honest. You could tell that they wanted to rest their legs, and I think the fact that we're going into this game, at the weekend, having had a break after 3 games in 7 days and a pretty intense run before the previous international break, I think probably suits Emery and the players. It just gives them a bit of time on the training ground, because previously I think they've been sort of, play, recover, and you don't actually get a chance to do much tactical work and sort of, build the long-term, base for what you want to do in the second half of the season, especially knowing that you're going to have Moreno and Ramsey back soon, and then obviously depending on if you dip into the market in January.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the clash of the best 2 sides in the West Midlands and the East Midlands, and I'm quite proud to say that, because it's quite funny. It annoys a lot of people, doesn't it? But what's your thoughts for the game on Sunday? I know you've got a game on Thursday night, I believe, haven't you? So
yeah, we have Alkmaar at home, which is an important one. I don't think it will make much difference to how Villa approach this one, though, if I'm honest.
Yeah, where's like the weaknesses in Villa's armour, or is there not really any at the moment?
I suppose the obvious weak link would be if we overplay a little bit and we can play ourselves into trouble. But I think that would need Forest to be very, very brave, because teams have tried to step onto Villa and press high. Brighton did, West Ham did. You saw what happened to them. I think, respectfully, for teams like Forest and the sort of those bottom half sides, you kind of have to sit back, bide your time, wait for Villa to make an error, and then you have to pounce. And Wolves did that very well a few weeks ago at Molineux. They kind of they sort of not necessarily parked the bus, but they were very aggressive in their own half. But they didn't try and go chasing Villa on the edge of Villa's box. They kind of let Villa have the ball. And when the chance comes, you have to take it, because we will more than likely have a lot of the ball and control the tempo of the game. It's whether you can knock Villa sort of off that tempo and out of control. And I think probably set pieces. I think, Pau Torres is phenomenal on the ball, but I don't necessarily think he's that sort of blood and thunder thoroughbred defender like a Mings, who's like dominant in the air and strong. He's a different kind of player. And then possibly getting at the fullbacks, as with, a lot of sides, if you can kind of, double down on Matty Cash or Dini. But I think Forest are going to have to play really well at the moment. Anybody is to beat Villa at the moment. I think if you turn up and you're not at it, it's going to be a long afternoon.
I mean, you'll find out when I come onto your show, Chris. But we're struggling up front, like, massively. I don't know if you've seen our highlights against Liverpool.
I did. I saw the Luton game. I saw some of the Luton game.
I mean,
and they were so wasteful, weren't they, in front of goal?
Yeah. Well, Hudson-Odoi is now out for a little while. Wood's now out. Awoniyi's just coming back from injury, and it's kind of like, well, what the heck do we do? Because we can't afford to get Awoniyi injured by starting him in this game, in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting one. I do think we'll probably set off you a lot in this game. And like you say about with Wolves and kind of try and pounce in that sort of way. But I know that will annoy it'll annoy the home crowd because you want to get on the front foot, don't you? Really,
you can, but I just think you have to be pragmatic.
Yeah,
sometimes, and there's certain teams you'll play against, and sometimes it'll suit going after them and putting them under pressure, and sometimes it won't. And I think you're just asking for trouble if you open the game up too much against Villa at the moment.
The thing that I am looking forward to is you're the biggest side that's come into us so far this season at the City Ground.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people will say the atmosphere has been a little bit poor, but because it's that kind of big team kind of notion of sorts, I think it will lend itself to be a good atmosphere. And I think like Villa always bring a lot of bring a good support wherever they go. So I mean, I'm looking forward to it. But what's your lineup prediction for the game? Are you going to be largely unchanged?
I would expect so. I think the only change you might expect is perhaps Bailey on the wing over Zaniolo. I think it'll be too soon for Ramsey and Moreno. I don't think they'll be back for a couple of weeks. Defensively and in goal, obviously, it pretty much picks itself at the moment. Obviously, Konza, Torres, Digne and Cash. Martinez obviously in goal. Kamara, Louise, McGinn in the middle, Watkins. Then it's just normally the choice is if you play Diaby or the only question mark is who you play on the other side. Do you play Bailey? Do you play Zaniolo? That's kind of your only selection dilemma at the moment.
That's fair enough.
So I don't think he'll change too much.
Yeah. Score prediction.
I'm going to go with 2-1 to the Villa. I think even though we're banging the goals in, we are actually not keeping that many clean sheets this year. So I do think you might nick a goal, but I do think we'll get the job done. I actually have a feeling it could be a really sort of not a scrappy game, but quite attritional at times. Because I think it'll be sort of the midfield. I'd imagine Forest will flood the midfield, try and swamp it, try and get amongst us, hit us on the break a little bit. And Villa, we play the way we play now. Everyone knows how we play now. It's a case of are you good enough to stop it? But we're very confident in the minute, and we're fairly clinical. But our home form has been different to our away form, and we've not been getting the same level of performance and results on the road. So I think Em will be looking at this one as a real good opportunity, especially with Fulham to come the week after to go, have a really good run going into the next international break. Now we've sort of got Tottenham away on the horizon, and then we've got back-to-back games against City and Arsenal coming up as well.
Right, interesting. I mean, I kind of agree with you in terms of how we're probably going to play. We're going to have to. It's going to be after some dark arts and some horribleness, I think, from our point of view, just purely because of what we've got available up top, unfortunately. But Chris, thank you very much for your time for coming on here.
More than welcome.
If anyone wants to check out the My Old Man Said podcast, where can they do so?
It's on Apple and Spotify, all the usual outlets.
Cool. And anything on Twitter?
At My Old Man Said, I think, or at Old Man Said. There's 2 pages. There's the main one, and then there's a podcast page. So if you go at My Old Man Said, it'll be there.
Bro, are you there Sunday?
I'm not on Sunday. No.
Oh, fair enough.
No, I'm not. I couldn't get a ticket. Couldn't get a ticket for that one. It's like gold dust getting Villa away tickets these days.
Same as Forest.
Even with a good booking history.
Same as Forest, mate. There's I don't know if it's the same on the Villa timeline, but everyone has a meltdown about it. So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, fair enough.
Pretty much.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll catch you on the next one, and come on, you Reds.
Take care, mate.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.